I used to use that as a way to invalidate my feelings as a young child, and I am not doing that anymore. But I really did do my best to acknowledge, like, they're doing the best that they can. They don't know any better. They're struggling too. They sacrifice so much. And I am also needing more. And I also am hurt by the fact that they didn't talk to me in this way, or they didn't support me in this way. And I appreciate what they did. So it's like really understanding and having compassion for their experience while not minimizing my experience as well. Hey, welcome back to the Empowered with Immigrant Parents podcast. This is Allison Lee, your host, your coach. And I wanted to share with you some of my responses to questions about motherhood on the Honor Your Motherhood panel. These were just questions that we didn't get to answer in particular, and I thought it was really important to share here with you. And even if you are not a mother, this may be relevant to hear, just to kind of reflect back on what it is that you may be thinking about, what you may be experiencing in your own family with your own mother, and just about being an adult with immigrant parents, because what I talk about is really through that lens, because I think it is so important that, especially with the layer and this aspect of having immigrant parents, it colors a lot of what we do. So it is so important to talk about. I'm realizing that I really love having questions from the community, from people that are like created outside of me, because I feel like I'm actually answering someone, and I work better that way when I'm interacting with people. So when I get questions, I get really excited about answering it and knowing that this answer is being heard and is something that people are curious about. It just lights me up a little bit more. So if you have any questions that you want answered, any topics that you want on this podcast, please send them my way. You can DM me at Hey Allison Lee on Instagram, or get on my email community, heyallisonlee.com/email, and you can reply back to my emails there when I send you weekly newsletters and topics and tools and stories, so that you could tell me what your questions are, and then I can talk about them here. I would love that. That would mean so much. To get back to the questions, these were questions that were on the Honor Your Motherhood panel that we just didn't get to, and I wanted to share them with you here. So the first question I wanted to talk about is, how has understanding what your parents went through shaped the way you move through motherhood? How has understanding what your parents went through shaped the way you move through motherhood? So when I look back at the circumstances, the way that my parents were and how they grew up, right? The poverty, the worry, the financial stressors, being immigrants themselves, generational trauma, and all the grief and loss that they've had in just immigrating over, leaving family behind, right? Leaving their home country behind, their home cities, their childhood, all of that. It's a lot, right? Can you imagine having to move and be uprooted, whether by choice or not? And by choice is like air quotes, because when there's war and when there's factors contributing to safety and people wanting better lives, or being forced out of their country, it's a lot. So when I think back on that, they really did the best that they could. So there's this idea of the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where there are certain stages that you go through, right, in order to achieve self-actualization, which is like, what's my purpose? What is your fullest potential? So that's at the very top. There's 5 stages that you go through. The first is physiological needs, whether or not you have shelter, water, and food, things like that. Where are we actually taken care of? And that is the most important, right? Then we move on to safety, right, which is like health. Do we have jobs? Do we have financial security? Then we move on to love and belonging, where we think about, our friendship, love, and connection. That's the third. The fourth stage is self-actualization, where if we have confidence, do we have achievements in things, and then we go into self-actualization, which I talked to you earlier about, which is purpose and acceptance. So the Maslow hierarchy of needs talks about human beings being motivated by, basic survival and just achieving their life's purpose. So we can only focus on those higher things, the confidence, the purpose, when everything else is taken care of. And for so many adults with immigrant parents, their parents immigrating over really focus on the first two, maybe three, right? Physiological needs, safety and security, and then love and belonging. And for me specifically, being born here in the US, while, the first two, physiological needs and safety, maybe could have been better, but those things were taken care of. So what I sought for was love and belonging, self-esteem, my purpose. And in different stages of my life, they look like different things. And my parents may not be searching for those things in the way that I was, because their focus is primarily on the first three. And that created a lot of disconnect and a lot of space in between where we were, right? A lot of distance. So I preface that because I think that's really important to know. Of course, your parents, my parents, our parents have their own set of history, their own set of things that they're dealing with, their own traumas, generational patterns and dynamics that they have, and that they may be working through, they may not be working through, they may be experiencing and passing down to us. And I think that's really important to also know where they were at primarily and where we are at primarily. And not to say that they can't, have self-actualization. I'm sure they did. But in what I'm talking about is when I was a young child, right? Because this helps me think about motherhood. Because I think of how they were as parents when I was younger. So that's why. Now, to go back to the question, how has understanding what your parents went through shaped the way I moved through motherhood? So for me, primarily knowing that my parents, they were working, trying to help us survive, trying to have security, trying to just have our basic needs met, and doing their best to show love and care. If I'm on this other side where I'm educated, I am financially stable, and I still struggle with parenting. I have access to therapy, coaching. I am a therapist. I am a coach. I know these things, and I still struggle because I am a human being, and as are you, to show up as the best version of myself all the time, right? And also, I am a mother for the first time with the first child. I am a mother for the first time with my second child, with 2 kids. So each stage of my life, I am experiencing it for the first time. So there's gonna be things I don't know. There's gonna be things that they don't know that they're experiencing, and we're just trying to figure it out together. When I think about it in that way, can I really visualize what my mom might be going through? She didn't have as much information, and I have way too much information at the palm of my hands, but she didn't have as much information as I did to know about what to do in certain things, in certain areas, in certain things. And that really gives me compassion for myself and for her, because there were a lot of things that I could be grieving about and really upset about for not having, and all of that. And that is all valid. I'm not saying to not validate that for myself or for them, but they were not able to experience. But it really helps me bring compassion to their experience, right? They truly, truly did the best they could. I used to use that as a way to invalidate my feelings as a young child, and I am not doing that anymore. But I really did do my best to acknowledge, like, they're doing the best that they can. They don't know any better. They're struggling too. They sacrifice so much. And I am also needing more. And I also am hurt by the fact that they didn't talk to me in this way, or they didn't support me in this way. And I appreciate what they did. So it's like really understanding and having compassion for their experience while not minimizing my experience as well. But by having this balance of, and I say balance, but it doesn't have to be like balance 100%. By having this balance of acknowledging what they've gone through and also validating what I've gone through, that self-compassion is just really, really solid. And I would encourage you, if you can, to really think about your experience, their experience, and really not minimize theirs and not minimize yours. Just because they went through something different than you, or they have sacrificed more in certain ways than you, or you have sacrificed in ways that they haven't, not one is bigger or stronger than the other. But what motherhood has taught me is to really see both sides, all the sides, all of it, as a pie chart, if you will, with all the factors and all the variables, and validate all of them. Because when we start doing this, well, they did this, so I can't feel this, that's where the guilt comes in. That's where the self-sacrificing pattern comes in. And that's the repay cycle that I always talk about, which you can check out in other episodes if you are interested or haven't heard it yet. And then that leads to resentment, that leads to feeling not good enough, or that feels like, I have to suck it up and just do it all and just deal with it. When all our experiences are true, are valid, and we can have space for both of them. Having this knowledge really helped me move through motherhood in healing my childhood and healing my relationships with my parents, and also giving myself compassion for when I mess up with my kids, and knowing that at the core, at the foundation, my intention is to really take care of them, and I'm doing the best that I can, and that is what I want to focus on. So knowing all of this and reflecting on all of this, my parents, the hierarchy of needs for them and their stages of life, and where I'm at, it's just really looking at the bigger picture without judgment and with self-compassion. So I hope that whether or not you have children, or whether or not you have different experiences with your parents, focusing on self-compassion for yourself is truly, truly important. So the second question I want to get to is, where do you draw the line between honoring your parents' experiences and not carrying their pain forward? There are two things I would encourage you to pay attention to, because this is relevant in my own personal experience and a common pattern that I see in the work that I do. So I'll just speak from my perspective. So when I start to have negative self-talk, when I start to ignore, when I start to minimize and invalidate my experiences, is when I need to stop. I need to break that pattern, because I can honor my parents' experiences and not invalidate myself. So this really connects well with that first question that I just shared, where they can have their experiences, right? They can have done their best, and I could have also been very sad about my experience in one particular thing, right? I'm not going to generalize it to my whole childhood or to your whole childhood, but it doesn't need to be they did the best they could, they were in poverty, they were struggling, they didn't know the language, whatever it is, and so I have to suck it up and I have to deal with it. So that's the thing that I pay attention to, and that I would encourage you to pay attention to. How can we not have this negative self-talk and also honor our parents' experiences? Because by us, by you, by me invalidating our experiences, we're then just creating another layer of heavy burden on top of that, right? Like, you're not only acknowledging what happened to your parents, and you're adding this extra level of guilt and shame and not being able to express our feelings or your feelings on top of that. So we need to be aware of that. The other thing that I pay attention to is when I start to do things on autopilot. This is something I talk about in the repay cycle a lot, where we're in this cycle of awareness, repay, self-sacrifice, mixed emotions, then we go back, right? So if you want to get more information about that, there's podcast episodes about that. But we get into this pattern of just doing things automatically on autopilot because we either one, want to support our family and our parents, we feel like we need to do it, or two, and or sometimes we do both exist at the same time, is that there are expectations from our family, from our parents, to give back, to help, and to repay. So when we start just doing things on autopilot, that's important to notice, right? So if mom calls and she says, can you do this thing for me? You're like, yes, okay, I will. I have to. That's the only way to do it. Then we need to be aware of that. You can check in and try to see what other options we have, right? Can we just pause for even 5 minutes and think about it? Or let me get back to you, right? So that you actually can think about what this means and decide from a place that is also honoring your experience and not just do things because you know that your parents have pain and have these other experiences that you want to quote unquote fix. You can, I can, we all can validate and honor our parents' experiences and their pain without making yourself feel small and minimize your needs. We don't need to put ourselves down to honor someone else. And I think I have done that on some level for so long that I don't want to do that anymore. And I think it's just really knowing too when to seek outside support for this, whether it's therapy or coaching or community, to really think about and talk about their experiences so that it's also not just all bottled up inside you. Because also when we don't talk about something, it's still there. Just because we don't highlight the fact that we're annoyed or we're angry or we're grieving or they had grief doesn't mean that the grief is not there or that the anger is not there. They're all there, and we just are bringing it to the surface so that we can actually start to release it. That is also how we honor our parents' experiences, and doing it in ways that feels safe for you and for us. I know for a lot of adults with immigrant parents, there's a lot of shame, a lot of feelings. Even I had this of talking about our parents because we feel like we're talking poorly about them. But really, if we're talking about it to release and to figure out a way to move forward, and as long as we're actually talking about it in a we're just gossiping type of way, that's not talking poorly about our parents. If it's reality, it's reality. And this is your experience. Your experience is valid to share. And you can caveat it to people. You could only talk about it with people you truly trust that can understand some of that. Worry about the shame and the talking poorly about your family. Find a place where you do feel comfortable talking about it, and also know that if you're just speaking about your experience, you can do that, but do it in a way that you feel good about, right? Where you won't feel like, oh my gosh, are they going to tell my parents? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Whatever outlet works for you, I would encourage you to know that you can talk about your experience without it being so shameful. And again, it also depends on how you talk about things and people, right? If I'm like, they were just such an a-hole, blah, 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 like, well, I don't know, are you venting? Are you gossiping? Or are you not actually wanting to move through this? And the last thing that I wanted to share that are more practical is, what does self-healing and self-care actually look like in your daily life practically? So for me, I wanted to share this with you just to give you ideas, just to spark some ideas for you, or, for you to have other options. Is my phone is almost always on Do Not Disturb. I don't really get any notifications. I look at my phone enough without needing the phone to alert me to look at the phone. And I think that has really given me more space to just not feel like I'm constantly being reached out to, constantly being called, right? Because I already feel like my energy and my thoughts help me think about so many things for my parents, for myself, for my kids, for my dog, for my clients, right? All of that already, that I don't need more things to grab my attention without me being ready for it or without me wanting it. Another thing that happened is I accidentally removed one of my emails from my phone, and this is a primary email that I use. I've used it for a long time, and I get a lot of marketing, coaching, different types of emails on there, and I used to check this email all the time on my phone. It was so urgent, so important to check all the time. And I accidentally removed it one time, and I haven't put it back. And I realized I can go to my laptop and I can just read whatever important emails are on there. And actually, I don't get that many important emails on that email. I don't know what I was worried about, what I'm checking for all the time. Maybe it just gave me something to do. So that could be something too, where you can uninstall stuff, right? And people talk about social media, uninstalling that, adding this thing called Brick or Blick. I think it's Brick, on your phone so you don't go on it so much. But sometimes really just making the barrier to accessing something harder, like looking on a laptop or a computer, can be helpful too. And just removing it from your phone so that you can actually take care of yourself and do the things that you need to do without getting your attention pulled away, or habits of checking your email, like just eating up your time, right? That works for me. So another thing that self-care actually looks like for me is drinking a lot of water. I get really cranky actually if I don't drink a lot of water and don't get my food in me. So that's really important. So I try to drink as much water as I can, try to have some alone time. This is something that has really worked well for me, and I would encourage you to try it if you are someone who has your mind kind of like racing all the time, or if you have a hard time stop thinking about like your to-do list or things that you have to do next and things that people have said to you, is actually listen to meditations or just music that doesn't have words, and actually focus on either the words or the lyrics. The words or the music. Because if you're able to do that, if you can actually just focus on the words that other people are telling you, that can really help you calm your mind and just listen to the meditation that is supposed to help you relax. And I know that can be a hard one for some people, because actually sitting still and even just listening to it may seem like a daunting task. And you might be I do this too, but think about like all the other things, even when you are listening to the words. And I just want to say that is normal, that is fine, but you're still sitting there, you're still trying, and just bringing yourself back to the actual meditation or music can be super helpful. And everything, as I've mentioned, is just a practice. We all have to practice, and meditation is one of it too, where it's not like there's some perfection award for it, but if it helps bring you down to a calmer state, even in the slightest, even if 5%, 10%, that is amazing, and that is something I would recommend you try. Some suggestions for that: I really love Insight Timer. I really love this UCLA app, and it's not only because I went to UCLA, but this UCLA app that has meditations that can be like 5 minutes, and they have it in different languages. I talk about this app all the time. I love it so much, and I highly recommend it for you to just get started. And Insight Timer is free. That UCLA app is free as well. And the last thing that I would do is, instead of being critical, I try to be very curious. So just try to be curious about what is going on. try to think about like, why am I feeling this way? Why? Why? Like, be a little child. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? What's going on? So when you're feeling a certain way and you're needing something, just be like, why is that? Instead of like, why do I need to, take another nap? I just slept. But why is that? Maybe my body is really tired. Maybe I'm coming down with something, right? Asking yourself the question of why and being curious can be very, very kind. And other things that I do, but not so much on a daily practice, is obviously going to therapy, having coaching, doing yoga, exercising when I can. And this is something that I love to do. I talk about this a lot, so maybe you've heard it. Maybe you've heard me say this before, is being and exposing yourself to new spaces and new things. I love to do that because I am really a proponent of knowing your options, knowing what your options are. And by being in different spaces and exposing yourself to different ideas, like coaching and just people that you admire to some extent, it can be really helpful to know what is available to you. Like the coaches that I follow, they're on a whole other level of success and embodiment of like things that I'm working on. And I know that that's possible for me by being in their world. And I love doing that because it helps me get out of my own head and my own limiting beliefs easier than me being like, well, I can be like, I don't know who's famous and rich and stuff, like Bill Gates or something, and create something, when that's like so far, versus like, hey, there's this business coach who's done this, who has achieved these things and was where I was years ago, or little while back, and that where they are is also possible for me. And that really helps me bridge that gap a little bit more, and I hope that does for you too. So that is the last thing I will leave you with. I hope this was something that you found helpful, and if you did, or if you can think of someone who would benefit from this conversation, from this information, please send it to them as well. And thank you so much for being here. And as I mentioned, even if you are not on this motherhood, parenthood journey, this information could be so helpful for you to consider and think about how to implement for you as you approach whatever journey you're on, and how to just really take care of yourself more and validate your feelings more. So thanks for being here, and I will talk to you next time. If you found this episode or any other episodes helpful, insightful, relatable so far, get on my email list as well. This is where you would get actionable tips, relatable tools, and it's just a space where you can feel connected and have the support and tools that may be beneficial for you as you're embracing how to unlock your fullest potential as an adult with immigrant parents. So go to heyallisonlee.com/email to get on the email list, and I will talk to you there. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, all information on this is intended to be informational and educational only. Although I am a licensed therapist, I am not your therapist. If you are looking for any medical or mental health services, please reach out to providers local to your area and seek out information that is specific for you. This information is not intended to replace any medical or mental health services that you may benefit from. And I hope that you enjoyed the information that was provided on the show today, and I'll see you on the next episode.